Hello guys and welcome to this year's first episode of Laowa's Meeting the Masters. Today I am going to talk about manual focus wide-angle lenses, how to best use them, tell you a few tricks. I will be switching between just the webcam and I have some slides prepared to you, and maybe I will just show you a lens here, show you how to use them best. Let's get right into it. So all the pictures I'm going to show you, I have taken with manual focus lenses. Also some with the Laowa lenses. I will be mostly using the 15mm f2.0 and the 9mm f5.6 as examples. And let me say right at the beginning that these are lenses that I bought because I think they are actually good. It is not lenses that Laowa sent me to advertise them and tell you how great they are. And also when preparing for today, I noticed that actually I don't have any autofocus wide-angle lenses, but we will get to that too. So if you don't know me, you can find my reviews on philippreef.net. You can find my pictures on Flickr, and you can find me on pretty much any platform. My name is rather rare, just dial it in, you will find me. I'm a very easy person to find. And what will we talk about today? First, we will talk about the differences between manual focus lenses and autofocus lenses. Then I will give you some hints and tricks how to best focus them. We will talk about the famous infinity hard stop. I already read in the comment that this is a topic you guys are interested in. I will also tell you what is my favorite Laowa lens. Because of my reviews, I have used plenty and I do have a clear favorite. And at the end, there is also a questions and answers part. So if you have any questions, just drop them on YouTube or Facebook. Every now and then I will also have a look. Answer them in between or at the end. I know some of you guys are only here because you read there is like a discount for the Laowa or Venus lens shop, and don't worry, you don't have to listen to me for 1 hour to get the code. You can already get it now. It is right here on the screen already. It is valid for the whole shop, and you get 5% on everything, but this is only true for the first 20 customers. So if there is a lens you wanted to buy anyway, now is kind of good time. I will also show the code again at the end, so don't worry if you missed it now. So differences between autofocus and manual focus lenses. I'm sure there are many of you, maybe you bought your first digital mirrorless camera. The only lens you have used yet is the autofocus kit lens, and you may be interested in some of Laowa's lenses or some other manual focus lenses, but you think, manual focus, this will be so difficult, all my pictures will be blurry, maybe I even have to guess the exposure, I don't want that. But actually it is very simple to use these lenses, and I will try to explain today how to use them in the most easy way. So on the left I used as example the Sony 16 to 35 f4 lens, and on the right we have one of Laowa's lenses, the 50mm f2. So when we look at the Sony lens, is the zoom lens, we have two rings. At the back we have the zoom ring. This is probably something you are used to use in everyday use, and at the front we have the focus ring. And actually I am pretty sure many of you that have an autofocus ultra wide angle lens, you have never ever touched the focus ring because it simply isn't necessary. Now on the right, the Laowa lens also has two rings. Close to the mount is the aperture ring. You use it to control the diaphragm, so in actually how you control how much light gets into your sensor, and it also affects how blurry your background is and all these things. And then the big ring is the focus ring, and you see here that on this focus ring you have distance markings in feet and in meters, and this is something that on many of today's autofocus lenses you don't have anymore. Like there is, except for the 90mm macro, there is no Sony lens, no Sony autofocus lens that has distance markings. You kind of have a digital distance scale in the camera, but I don't think it's super useful, so we will not talk about that. And then you see that in between you have a few more numbers, and this is the distance scale, and maybe you never pay attention to it, or you don't really know what it is used for. So what it is used for, you see here on the 50mm you see markings for 5.6, f11 and f22, and what this scale is telling you, what distance range is in focus. So you see that at f22 there is a bigger distance range in focus than there is at f5.6, which kind of makes sense. We will talk about this later again. It will be very useful for us. So now let's get right into it, how to best focus, make it easy for you. And I have been thinking of three different scenarios. The one is just daylight shots. You have blue sky, you are using f8 to f11. The second is astrophotography, and the third one is close-up. So for all these scenarios I use different focus techniques, which I will talk about. And again, this today is mostly aimed at beginners. So if you're an experienced user, you're getting the results that you want, and you're using different methods than I use, is perfectly fine with me. I'm not trying to change the way you do it, or to make you do it in a way that you don't like. This is really mostly for the people that are not yet getting the results that they want, or that think that using manual focus wide angle lenses is really difficult. So I just read the comment that someone was asking here about focus peaking, and I'm not sure all of you are familiar with focus peaking. I think pretty much every mirrorless camera can do it. Some of the DSLRs can do it too. And what it is doing is the high contrast edges, the camera thinks are in focus, they are highlighted. On some cameras you can change the color. I set it to red. So when you look at this picture on the left, then you are everything which is highlighted red is supposed to be in focus. Now the problem with ultra wide angle lenses is that the peaking is not accurate enough. I really recommend not to only rely on the peaking for your ultra wide angle lenses. For today I checked with the 15mm. You see here on the right some photos I took of the lens. There is one on the top I focused at 1 meter. At the bottom I focused past infinity, nothing is in focus here, and between these two settings the peaking did not change at all. So what happens here is you see the picture like on the left side, you see it on your camera and you think like, oh yeah, okay, this looks like it is in focus, great. But when you get home and you zoom in, you have a closer look, you see that the picture is actually blurry. And of course, we don't want that. No one wants that. So what you could do is that for every picture you use the magnify on your camera and check very closely, is everything in focus? But there's quite a bit of work. It is not that much fun. So there must be an easier way, right? So what do I do for pictures like this? This is what I'm talking about when I mean daylight. It is bright. You are using f8, f11 to get, you want a high depth of field, you want everything to be in focus. This is another example, and I will show you now the technique that I am using for this. It is actually a very old technique. It is almost as old as photography itself, I think, and it is called zone focusing. And again, you may think like, oh, this sounds kind of complicated, but with wide angle lenses it is really simple, because when you shoot top down f8, f11, and with an ultra wide angle lens, let's say something between 9 and 21 millimeters, the depth of field is just huge. It is really huge. When we look on the right here, the distance scale, the one in the center, it is telling us that at f11, I set here f11 on the aperture ring, at f11 everything from 0.5 meters to infinity will be in focus. So that means technically if you hold your hand in front of the camera and you have a mountainside or a city in the back, everything will be in focus. And this is a technique that I am usually using. And now the thing is, these distance scales, they are not like super accurate. There are mount tolerances, production tolerances. What you find super sharp on a low resolution camera may not be what you find super sharp on a high resolution camera. So my recommendation here is you just test it. And this is also what I did here. I took the lens. I hope my camera focuses on it, and I set the focus ring behind infinity here as far as it goes. And I set the camera to f11. Yeah, this is f11, good. And then I had the camera on tripod. I used the magnify and I was rotating the focus ring to a closer distance. And by the time I noticed, oh, okay, something at infinity is getting worse, this is when I stopped. And the result you see here, I took this picture out of my window here. You see the window frame that was like 60 centimeters or 2 feet from the camera. And you see this house in the background, which is practically at infinity. And you see everything is in focus. So actually, despite it is a manual focus lens, but it actually has the fastest autofocus in the world, because you just set this distance and you can shoot. You can shoot anything from a landscape to some, for example, many use wide angle lenses for sports photography, like skateboarding or some things. And you just set this distance and you have no autofocus lag, nothing, you can just shoot. And I also recommend, when you found this setting, to memorize it. And this is what I did here with this lens. I found out that setting the distance to roughly 1 meter, everything from an arm's length away until infinity is in focus. So whenever I'm in a hurry, it happens, maybe you have a great sky with some sun rays shining through and you need to be fast, you don't have much time to set up your camera. I set the lens to f11, the focus ring to 1 meter, and I can just shoot and be assured that everything will be in focus. The title of today's episode was also, why are manual focus ultra wide angle lenses easiest to use? And this picture here is one example where you are better off with manual focus compared to autofocus, because you see there are moving parts in the images, in this image. In the carousel there are the people, it is moving, and when you have an autofocus lens, it will and something moves, it doesn't know where to focus. It will try to focus on the moving people mainly, but this is not what you want. So here again I just set a distance of like 1 meter and you can just shoot. Very easy. And also here, this one, I had the camera on tripod, so I checked before where I will be standing, and I've set the camera to, I don't know, the lens to 1-2 meter, and super easy. It's really easy to use. And also here, when you are, let's say you are out with your family or your boyfriend, girlfriend, and with these lenses, and when you are out, you don't have time to for every shot. You cannot precisely focus, say, yeah, maybe hold this position, I need to focus, magnify, set very precise focus. It is not necessary. Just set your ultra wide angle lens to like 1 meter and you are good. You can just start shooting. Very simple. And also with slightly longer lenses, this is 21 millimeter. It is very easy. For my wide angle lenses, I once tried like what distance should I set it to. I memorize it and I am always good to go. And this is also a good example with wide angle lenses. how big the depth of field is. You have this rock here on the left. It is maybe 10 centimeters from the camera. You have the trees in the back and everything is in focus. So as long as you're at f8, f11, really easy to use. And I forgot to mention this at the beginning. What I am telling you, it does not only apply to Laowa lenses, it applies to any wide angle lens. It can be Voigtländer, it can be Zeiss, anything really. This is another example. You have these rocks in the foreground, the bridge in the background, the sun shining through, and everything is in focus. And this was actually one of these moments where I didn't have much time. The clouds were moving and I didn't know for how long the sun will be on the edge of a cloud so that I get a nice sun star. So I really had to be fast here. I set the lens to f11 and I spent time on the composition and not on adjusting the focus here. This is also a good example. The rocks in the foreground, they are really a few centimeters from the camera. The Colosseum is in the back and everything is perfectly crisp and sharp. And some people they are really into focus stacking to get everything in focus, but with ultra wide angle lenses I think it is just not needed at all. So now, and I also saw in the comments here, some people have been wondering about that, astrophotography. The 15mm f2 is a great lens for that. I love to use it for astrophotography, taking pictures of the Milky Way. And here the situation is different. You shoot at a wider aperture like f2 and you really want your background to be in best focus. And the method I'm going to show you here, it works for any lens. It doesn't have to be a wide angle lens even. It can also be a fast 35mm lens that I have been using here. Really it works for everything and in any condition. And the thing is, at night everything is more difficult. If you are in a place like this, really it is pitch black outside. You are alone there, you can hardly see anything, and then you have to focus on something. And the method I am using here, I called it smallest dot method. Maybe someone else already gave it another name, I don't know. And what I do here is I use the live view and the magnification. And I look for a point light source in the background. And this can be anything. It can be a street lamp near the horizon. It can also be a bright star like Polaris, which I am often using for it. And I made this small video. I hope it will work properly. So I magnify, and you see as I focus, the light circles, they get smaller when the image is getting sharper. So I start here at some closer distance, like a meter or so. I go to infinity, and now I even go past infinity. You see it is getting worse. And what you can take away, when the dot of light is the smallest, the image will be the sharpest. And this is a method I am always using at night. I found it to be the most secure method to do it. And the light, it doesn't even have to be that far away. I have been giving some astrophotography workshops, and when you have a guy that is like 20 meters away with a headlamp, you can do this on his headlamp. It will be good enough. So this is the method I'm usually using. You see the image will be a bit grainy. It will be even more grainy when you use a star like Polaris, but I always found it to be good enough. So here are some more examples for you, for all of them with different lenses. I have been using this technique. And I also didn't do any focus stacking or exposure stacking here. It's just a simple panorama. At philippreef.net I also have a few articles if you want to know more about astrophotography, editing techniques to improve it, all these kind of things. This one again with the Laowa 15mm. I think if I remember correctly, I either use this star here on the right or these ones on the left to focus. And when you focus close to infinity with ultra wide angle lens, it is good enough to have also the tree in focus. So again, there is no focus stacking going on here, different exposure for the foreground. This is single shot. Because I'm kind of lazy when it comes to post-processing, I have to admit. So the third one I want to talk about is close-up photography. And here what many people are not aware of. When you are using ultra-wide-angle lenses, you are used to have a huge depth of field that we have already used with the zone focusing. But when you focus very close, and most of Laowa's lenses have very short minimum focus distance, you get really shallow depth of field. And what I use for these kind of shots is I use the peaking first to roughly guide me, but then I go to the magnify and set it really precise. Again, I'm showing you an example here. Here the peaking is somewhat useful because you see in which area roughly the point of best focus is, but when you zoom in, you again see that not everything that is red here is actually in focus. But when you magnify, then the peaking can actually be useful to set the focus like really precise. I have again short video showing you this, and here again you see that the camera thinks, because black and white is really strong contrast, the camera thinks that these edges are in focus, but actually they are not. You will see when I use the magnify. Here you see that actually what the peaking showed you is in focus actually isn't. Focus is far behind. But you also see that the peaking can help you here to really see which part is in best focus. Like here, now you see when in the magnify you see the red edges, then you are good usually. There is someone asking, the 215 is one of Laowa's lenses. It comes for, I think, all the mirrorless mounts. Sony E, Canon RF, Nikon Z. and I think it is great choice for astrophotography because it is really compact for what it is. I hope that could answer your question. So this again is a good example that when focusing on something close with a wide angle lens, the depth of field is actually pretty thin. I have stopped down to f5.6 and you see the depth of field is really thin. The mushroom is in focus, but right behind it it is already blurry. Nice bokeh actually. So now something that many people are worrying about is the infinity hard stop. So Kevin is asking some questions here. What kind of sun star I like? I like these ones, like 10 or 12 well-defined rays. I think they add to the picture. I use this as a point of interest in many of my pictures. If you check out my Flickr, you will see I have plenty of shots like this. It's just like generating another point of interest in a picture, balance it a bit. So here I try to balance the mushroom on the light with on the left with the sun star on the right a bit. So after this small excursus, we come back to the infinity hard stop. This is something that actually confuses many people, I think, and that also worries many people. So what is the infinity hard stop? Some people think or expect that when you have a manual focus lens and you turn the focus ring all the way to the hard stop, like I'm trying to show you here. When you turn it all the way, at some point it just stops. This is the so-called infinity hard stop. And very often people get confused when the lens is not perfectly sharp at infinity when you use that stop. And there are mainly two reasons for that. And the thing is, you don't want an infinity hard stop on your lens. You really don't want that. And this is why. On the left we have my Sony a7 III, and on the right we have the Sony a7R2. And it is the same lens. It is the lens I have already shown you. It's a 215. And I checked with the Magnify for some houses in the distance where at what point they are sharp. And you see here it is a different position on the focus ring. It is not a big difference, but there is still a difference. Here on my a7 III it is almost in the center of the infinity sign, and here on my R2 it is a bit on the right. So if the hard stop was calibrated for the R2, I would not be able to even focus at infinity on my other camera. And this is something that I don't want. I had a few manual focus lenses that I could not actually focus at infinity, and it is really, really, really bothersome. And I don't want that. And the manufacturer also does not want that, because when you buy a lens and you cannot focus it at infinity, what are you going to do? You will send it back. So no one likes it. I don't like it, Laowa doesn't like it, and you don't want it either. And the problem is, it's just the production tolerances, and I cannot speak for Nikon Z or Canon RF because I haven't used as many cameras, but especially with the Sony cameras, the differences between two cameras, it can be pretty significant, as you see here. And there is another reason, and that is that most of today's lenses, they use low dispersion glass elements. Nikon calls it ED lenses, you may have heard before this term. And when the temperature changes, this point of optimal infinity focus, it also changes. So you need a bit of leeway. Otherwise, if you go to a place with rather extreme temperatures, like for example you shoot the northern lights on Iceland at night at minus 20 degrees, and 2 weeks later you are in some desert and want to take pictures of the dunes, this point of optimal focus, it will not be the same. And if there is a hard stop right at infinity, under some climate conditions you may also not be able to actually focus at infinity. And again, we really don't want that. Oh, there are some questions. So there is the question, could you give me the trick to set infinity on my pretty new Laowa 9mm? Yeah, like I said, with the 9mm, the depth of field is actually ridiculously huge. So I am checking now the distance scale myself. I am not sure which mount version Bruno is using. I have the Leica M mount version, and the distance scale is a bit hidden here, very close to the bayonet. And when you check the numbers, with this lens, pretty much always everything is in focus. So when I look at the scale, set it to 1 meter, everything will be in focus. Just set 1 meter and you are good. Yeah, 1 meter. I will talk about the 9mm lens a bit later, very soon actually. I saw there was another question coming in about nodal rails. Am I using a nodal rail for my panoramas? Actually, I am not, because I am like really lazy and I don't want to carry a nodal rail, and especially at night for Milky Way shooting, you don't want to adjust it in the field. A nodal rail, my personal experience, you need it when you have something very, very close to your camera. When we go a bit back here, for this picture, for example, with the background being very close, here it is. For this picture, with the background, the foreground being very close, the background far away, here you would need a nodal rail. But for the other panoramas I have been showing like this, everything is far away. You don't need a nodal rail. Really, this is very simple one row panorama. I put the camera vertical, and then I take like 7 shots, and then you are good. And here is another question: what does entrance pupil actually mean? This is the point you should rotate around for your panorama. So if you have a nodal rail, this entrance pupil should be in the center of your rotation plate. And I see there is another question. This is created easily higher than may affect sharpness. Yeah. This is not really important now. So now we come to an interesting chapter, and this is my favorite Laowa lens, and this is actually the 9mm f5.6 that has been released today. I like it because it is the widest lens available on the market for full frame cameras. Probably it offers the widest viewing angle of any lens that is available. And this is not the only thing that I like. What I also like is that the image quality is actually really good. It is way better than I would have expected. And testament to that is that all this stuff, after I got the 9mm, I could sell. So buying this lens actually made me some money. I get many lenses for review for philipreeve.net, and this 9mm, I have only been using it for a few days, and I told the Laowa guys, okay guys, I am not sending this lens back, I want to buy it right now. Because I actually thought that it is that good. And before, I have been using the Canon 17mm tilt shift for lots of my architecture photography, and it is a really big and heavy lens. So in addition to that, for travel, I have been using the Voigtlander 10mm 5.6, roughly the same size as the Laowa 9mm. On the next slide there is a picture showing the lenses side by side. We will get to that. And the 10mm, it is okay, it is not a bad lens, but I never found it to have really great quality on the edges. It is actually a lens I bought when it came out. I was excited because at that time 10mm was the widest lens, and I have been using it for a few years, but I wasn't super happy with it, and I sold it, and I missed it, and I bought it again, but again I wasn't super happy, and I was really relieved to sell it when Laowa came out with the 9mm, which I think is better in almost any way. And the next thing is, I don't know if you are using a filter system already, but these two lenses, they need 150mm wide filters. They are a pain to carry around, really a pain. And when I was in Japan 2 years ago, my big polarizer, it broke, it had a crack, and this is not only annoying, it is also really expensive to replace. And I was really happy to get rid of my 150mm filter systems. I didn't look back. The 9mm takes 100mm filters. They are way easier and more fun to carry. And here you see the size difference. For some applications that I have carried the 17 millimeter you see here on the right, I can now carry the 9 millimeter, and this is really a big difference. I saw here Martin is asking about the Laowa 50 millimeter shift lens, and yes, I did test it, and I like it more than the Canon, but I still like it less than the 9 millimeter because again it is pretty bulky. But here the question is also, Martin, I don't know if you are doing lots of professional architecture photography. I don't need very high resolution for that. So if I use the 9 millimeter and I crop a bit, then this is still perfectly fine for me. If I needed more resolution, I would also use the 50 millimeter shift lens, but I don't. So I am good here. And you see also here the second from the left is the 10 millimeter Voigtländer, and the Laowa 9 millimeter Voigtländer 10 millimeter. They are pretty much the same size. You have also here the second from the right is the 15 millimeter f2 that I have used for many examples, for many of the pictures in these slides. So you have a bit of a size comparison. Actually the Laowa lenses, they are usually very reasonably sized, which is something I like. And now I have there is Shebu is asking, if you check out philipprief.net, you find a whole review for the Canon shift lens and the Laowa shift lens, also direct comparisons. So just check out philipprief.net, you find sample images, comparisons, pretty much anything you could ask for, I hope. Yeah, Martin, if you have less pixels, then maybe for you the shift lens is really better. For me, for the architecture pictures, I'm using the 42 megapixels R2, so really I am good here. For what I do, again, needs are different. If you need it, if you sell it. Oh, there is an interesting question from YouTube. Is APS-C an option for you? Actually, no. In the beginning, I also started with APS-C cameras. My first camera, my first real camera was a 6 megapixel Nikon D40 APS-C. I also started with 18 to 55 kit lens. I think this is now almost 10 years ago. Rob, there are two 9mm lenses. There is a 9mm f2.8, this is APS-C, and I am mainly talking about the newer 9mm f5.6. The 5.6 is full frame. Back to the question, is APS-C an option for me? Pretty much no, because nowadays you can get full frame cameras like an old Sony A7 camera, like first generation. Yeah, I wouldn't really recommend that, but like an A7 II, Sony A7 II is a great capable camera. You can get it for less than some of the higher end APS-C cameras. And what I really like about full frame compared to any other format is the huge range of lenses you can use. There are lenses like 50mm f0.95. There is the widest lens you can get is for full frame is this 9mm. You can get tilt shift lenses. You can get crazy portrait lenses like a 200mm f2. And if it always depends on what you need. If I was only shooting stop down landscape or architecture, and I would usually shoot like, I don't know, 14 to 200mm, then APS-C would be good for me, but I really like the extremes. I like super fast lenses, I like super wide lenses, I like to have choice, so therefore for me it is full frame. But I also often say this in the reviews, what is best for me is not necessarily what is best for you. So if full frame is what I think is best for me, it doesn't mean that you have to go out and buy full frame cameras now. There is another question from YouTube. May there be problems with focusing when using an adapter to put, for example, Canon lenses to a Fuji camera? This is actually a very interesting question, and it would take some time to properly answer that one. And again, for now, I will say go to philipreef.net. We have some articles on adapters for mostly manual but also autofocus lenses. With adapters, it is a bit, you get what you pay for. If you are using a modern, rather wide Canon EF lens, like for example the 11-24, you should buy a more expensive adapter. Otherwise, there may be a bit of image quality degradation. If you want to adapt, I don't know, if you want to adapt like a Canon FD lens, he isn't stated here if he's talking about modern EF or older FD lenses. If we are talking about older FD lenses, also a cheap adapter can do. What I am using for all manual lenses when I don't want to spend much money, I am using the K and F adapters. They are a bit heavy, but the quality is quite good and they are rather cheap. You pay between 20 and 30 bucks for an adapter. For Canon EF lenses like the 17mm you still see here, I recommend either the Sigma MC11 or Metabones at least Mark IV. So everything Mark IV or later is okay, not one of the earlier ones, because you cannot upgrade the firmware. And here it is really case-to-case scenario. I have lenses that work better with the Sigma adapter. I have lenses that work better with the Metabones adapter. Maybe I have reviewed the lens you're interested in. If not, leave a comment at philipreef.net and I will try to answer it, or leave it in the chat later. So for some people may think, yeah, the 9mm is smaller than the 17mm, but the size of the lens is not really important to me, and it's all fine with me. But what I found out, that when the lenses are smaller and not so obtrusive, I can go with these lenses to places I would not go with the bigger lenses. And the 9mm, because of COVID, there wasn't much travel last year. but in summer I managed to spend a few days in Italy, and the 9mm just came out, and so I wanted to use it so I can write a review. And I took pictures with that lens that otherwise would have not been possible. This, for example, is a museum, and to get this angle of view I would have needed a tilt shift lens or another wide angle lens, and with a tilt shift lens you cannot go there. There are also other tourists. I waited here for none of them to be in the picture, but there were some behind me. You cannot go there, set up a tripod and do some panorama stitching. It doesn't work like that. And if I had used the Voigtländer lens, the 10mm that I was using before, I know that I would have not been happy with the result at f5.6. I didn't like its image quality. But this picture here, I was using ISO 3200, 1/15 of a second, so I was really at the limit here when it comes to light gathering capabilities. And this one is another example. It is a pretty cool library in Venice, and it's also a bookstore. And you cannot walk in a bookstore that is crowded with people with a huge tilt and shift lens and set up your tripod there. It simply doesn't work like that. And with this small 9mm, I had a small bag. I get it out, take a shot, and I'm good to go. And this here is another good example. This is in Italy, Florence. This is Michelangelo's David. And also here the place is crowded with security. You cannot even get in there with a tripod. And it is totally out of question to use tilt shift lens, stitch a panorama or anything like that. And these things without the 9mm they wouldn't have been possible. And also this one, it is here in Stuttgart where I live, and it is some public governmental building. You cannot just go in there and set up a tripod. It is not possible. So this small 9mm lens, it goes places where I couldn't go with bigger lenses. And some people in the chat they have been asking how does it work for me for architecture shooting. And this one I used the 9mm for. And I should have went there on Sunday because the cars here, I don't really like the cars. And this is a really good example because I have been there before and using the Canon 17mm tilt shifted up. And what you see here, I found a nicer moment because no cars were parked here. But what I don't like is that on the left side, this other building, it kinda touches the building I want to take a picture of. But here on the top I was already at the limit of what was possible. And now in comparison, the 9mm, I could get a bit closer to the building and get a gap here. So you see some sky and you see that it is two separate buildings. And this is possible with the 9mm. It wasn't possible with the tilt shift. And I compared the quality in this corner, like the Canon lens is shifted here, and I like actually the sharpness and clarity. I like it more of the 9mm. There was a question from Bruno about this one. No, actually I wasn't lying on the floor. The lens is so wide, I was just standing. So I didn't get attention from the other tourists. If you lay down, then it will usually attract people's attention. It is not a good idea. So I am pretty much at the end of what I wanted to tell you and show you. I hope that I could give you some tips that may be helpful for you on how to focus your wide angle lenses. If you have been scared about using a manual focus lens, I hope that I could also help with that. If you have any questions, now is a really good time to ask. If you saw a lens that you really want, you have the discount code here again. It is a 0, by the way, BAS05. You get 5% on anything on the shop. But this is only valid for the first 20 customers. But, and this I can announce you, in 2 weeks there will be episode 2 with Tommy Colloway. He will talk about using wide angle lenses for video. I know nothing about video. I am already happy that I managed to set up my A7 III as webcam here, and I hope that it worked somewhat okay. But this guy, he's great with video, he's great with lights, which is also something I am not really good at. I usually use the light that I can get. So if video is something you're interested in, just tune in 2 weeks, slightly different time. And now we have some time for questions and answers. And there are some interesting questions already. So let us see. Macro wide angle gives greater depth of field than less wide angle. I am not a macro expert. This is not my thing. I lack the patience for that, to be honest. But as far as I know, at a certain point, at a certain magnification, like life-size magnification, the focal length is irrelevant at some point. So a 50mm macro lens at life-size magnification does not have significantly more depth of field as, let's say, a 90mm macro lens. But again, this is not a topic where I am really great at. Then I have from Kevin the question, what is the strangest lens you have ever used? That is a good question, actually. That's really a good question. I can tell you what was the worst lens. That was a Zenitar 50mm f0.95. It is a brick of a lens, more than 1 kg, and the image quality was unbelievably bad. Really bad. I haven't used the Laowa probe lens. I think that one would also qualify for being a strange lens. So what else we have? How do you read the markings on a manual lens to calculate the depth of field? This is actually the distance scale I have been talking about. I am trying again to show it to you. Here. you see, you have the focus ring, and then you have here the distance scale, and actually you don't have to calculate anything because there already are the markings. So if we set it like this, at f11 everything from about 0.5 meter to infinity should be in focus. So you don't need to calculate, you can just use the markings that are already there. I hope that was helping. So then there is a question about the 9mm. What I have found the best setting to avoid vignetting with the 9mm at 87. Yeah, this is possible actually. When it comes to vignetting, this is also to a huge degree a matter of taste. Sometimes I add vignetting also, especially for portraiture. So there's not that exact value. It always depends on the motive. Also with astrophotography pictures, I like to have a bit of vignetting. I don't really like when all of the sky has the same brightness. So also to panoramas, I often add a little bit of vignetting in post. So do we have any more questions? Again, if at a later point, or you see later the recording and you have some questions, at the beginning you find how to contact me. I will try to answer your questions. The more specific the better. If you just ask me, hey guy, which 50mm lens should I buy? I can't really help you. This is like asking me which car to buy or which women to marry. Really, this is so subjective, I can't help you. But if you ask me for architecture, should I get the 9mm or the 11mm, I may be able to give you a somewhat useful answer. So, no more questions, then thank you very much, and I hope that you will be here again in 2 weeks when you... Oh, there is something. According to what you said, do you recommend 9mm for interior shots? Again, it depends on the resolution you need. If you have a high resolution camera, 42 megapixels, 61, I recommend the 9mm because I made a profile to correct the distortion on the 9mm, or no, this time Laowa did it. You find it on their homepage, and I find that when you take interior architecture shots, you always have plenty of straight lines, and if there is even a little bit of distortion, it is not that easy to correct with tilt shift lenses, is what I found. If you have the 9mm and you use the profile, it is for me a little bit easier to deal with. But here again, you can check my reviews. I talk about distortion of both lenses as well, and then you can see what works better for you. Okay, glad I could help Caleb with the 12 millimeter. So I will be available on Facebook a bit longer. So if you have any more questions, you can just write there, and I will try to reply there. I will text you. And again, if any questions left, you find me philipreef.net, Instagram, Flickr, pretty much anywhere. So thanks for watching, and hope to see you all watching Tommy Colloway in 2 weeks. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.